Did you know? When author J.K. Rowling put the multimedia rights for her Harry Potter novels on sale, several companies tried to obtain the license. Movie studios Disney, Universal, and Warner Brothers were locked in an intense bidding war for the rights, but another company also entered the fray: Nintendo. In the late 1990s, Nintendo of America's internal development team was suddenly ordered to halt their current projects when management heard that the Potter rights were being auctioned off. The developers were split into two teams and told to create pitches for a third-person adventure title and a game based on Quidditch. The studio wanted to develop these adaptations themselves and planned to release them across the N64, Game Boy Advance, GameCube, and any future Nintendo platforms to coincide with the release of new books. However, as the pitches developed, there were disagreements about the direction the team should go in. Both development teams wanted a Western, cartoony art direction similar to the cover art for the British version of the Harry Potter books, but Nintendo's higher-ups wanted the games to take inspiration from manga. The team's artists understandably disagreed with this decision, with one saying, "It went against all my instincts based on what I had read quotes from JK about keeping it strictly British, and I had to revamp my initial designs to go more manga/Japanese. I had a big fight about that, but my boss insisted." Nintendo's bid was declined by Rowling for unspecified reasons, but an anonymous source believed it was because she was more interested in proposals put forth by multimedia companies who weren't exclusively tied to video games. Warner Brothers eventually won the bidding war and began looking at directors for a film adaptation. Steven Spielberg was interested and wanted to condense several books into one motion capture CG animated film, similar to the Polar Express. Rowling was unimpressed with this interpretation and urged Warner Brothers to refuse. They agreed, and Spielberg passed on directing a live-action adaptation of the first book. Several other directors were considered for the Sorcerer's Stone, with Terry Gilliam being Rowling's personal choice, though Home Alone director Chris Columbus was hired in the end. When he was first hired, Chris Columbus intended to direct all the movies in the franchise. However, after shooting the first two, he realized that all 7 would have to be filmed relatively back-to-back, so that younger actors didn't age out of their roles. Word that he was gonna miss his own children growing up, Columbus departed after work was completed on the Chamber of Secrets. Both M. Night Shyamalan and Guillermo del Toro were considered as his replacement for the Prisoner of Azkaban, but the position eventually went to Alfonso Cuarón. Because he'd never read the books or seen the movies, Cuarón asked Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, and Rupert Grint to write papers about their characters so he could acquaint themselves with them. Watson, true to character, went overboard and wrote a 16-page paper about Hermione Granger. Radcliffe wrote a 1-page summary of Harry Potter, and Rupert Grint never turned anything in, claiming that Ron Weasley would have done the same. Cuarón laughed and said he was perfectly cast. As with the first book, the first film actually had 2 different titles. In North America, it's known as Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, but in the rest of the world, they're called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. This change was made because the book's publishers were worried that Americans, especially their target audience of children, would be unfamiliar with the legend of the Philosopher's Stone and how it relates to alchemy and magic. So, to more clearly indicate the series' subject matter, they changed the title to Sorcerer's Stone. The filmmakers did well to keep in line with this change, creating 2 different sets of posters, trailers, title cards, and merchandise with the separate names. They even went as far as to film several scenes twice, once where the characters say Sorcerer's Stone, and another where they say the Philosopher's Stone.
This is about the Philosopher's Stone. This is about the Sorcerer's Stone.
Early on in the Harry Potter series, the filmmakers tried their hardest to do as many effects as they could practically. In the Sorcerer's Stone, the floating candles in the Great Hall were actually candle-shaped containers holding oil and burning wicks. They were suspended by wires on a rig to make them move up and down, giving the illusion of them floating. At one point, a wire holding one of the candles snapped and fell to the floor. While no one was injured, the rig was deemed a safety hazard, and CG candles were used in all of them. Richard Harris thought it was a real bird when he first saw it. Similarly, a large animatronic was